I think we can start. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another exciting session from IIA Madras Chapter. Today with us, we have two eminent speakers. So before I introduce them, May of every year is celebrated as IIA Awareness Month. So to all the members and non-members who have joined this event, keep looking forward for exciting more programs conducted during this month. We'll be having another physical IIA Awareness Month program on May 26th to be held in Hotel Sabera in Chennai. So looking forward to see you all there also. It's going to be a panel discussion on thinking after ChatGPT from an audit perspective. So today's session is going to be on GRC overview and implementation methodology. So for this topic, we have two eminent speakers with us. We have Mr. Karthik and we have Mr. Rajagopalan. So first I'm introducing Mr. Rajagopalan. So he is a triplet. He is a chartered accountant, cost accountant, and a company secretary, and also holds a bachelor degree in commerce. He has both IT and finance background, very, very rare combination. He has over 7 years of experience in audit and 20 years of experience in SAP in various roles. So he has led 17 end-to-end implementations and have been part of various transformational IT initiatives. He is a certified business excellence assessor credited by CII and has been driving business excellence for IT. Presently, he leads various transformational initiatives at IT in TAFE and also does business process solutioning for all its SAP initiatives. He holds the responsibility of IFC-FR framework implementation for IT and allied initiatives. Very, very happy to have you here today amongst us, sir. I am sure our members will get immensely benefited by your knowledge sharing today. And our next speaker for today is going to be Karthik Ramachandran. So he is a director with Deloitte's risk advisory practice and has more than 12 years of experience spanning in areas of information security review, SOC 1, SOC 2 testing, SOX testing, etc. He has worked with clients across a range of industries, including banking, insurance, financial services, IT, ITES, manufacturing, and healthcare. He has performed readiness review for COVID, B5, ISO, HIPAA, HITRUST, NIST, GDPR frameworks for various companies, IT security reviews for across processes and industries. Karthik is a bachelor in engineering, and he is also a certified information system auditor by qualification. He has experience working across in Canada, UK, Deloitte offices, and also deployed on-site to clients in USA for delivering the audits. With both their wide experiences, I think this session is going to be very, very interesting. So already we have huge registrations and participants are still joining in. So with no further delay, I'm handing over the sessions to Karthik for taking it forward with our guest speaker.
Very good evening to everyone. I'm really delighted to be presenting as part of the IAA about this one of the emerging topic, I would say. While all of us would have been very much tired of hearing the word SAP, but then this SAP GRC brings its own flavor, which I think is creating a new world for most of us. Maybe I wouldn't say SAP GRC, actually GRC is something I think across all the industries, they're starting to look at how it's going to benefit their organization. I think all of us will admit that in today's world, the technology is actually emerging. They're trying to integrate all the applications. API is playing a big role in integrating various applications. And also the technology that they want to probably bring in most of the process, which was dealt a kind of manual earlier, So they're trying to bring out a technology to replace the manual process. So there has been a increased amount of technology that most of the organizations they are looking out today. While that said, it also puts the organization to a larger risk, right? So one part is that organizations are getting into too much of technology. They want to build RPA, they want to build the AI, and they want to probably integrate that with various systems, trying to make it more automation with the so-called fancy word of the digital world. Now, on the other hand, they're also expanding globally. While the organizations are expanding globally, there are quite a lot of risks that they need to adhere to. It could be, in terms of the global regulations, could be security, could be privacy, or in every country today, they started having their own security framework or the privacy framework, right? So there is an increased amount of the compliance that an organization have to look for. Now, having these two on the one hand, on the cream layer, we have the most security concerns, the fraudulent activities, which, while the systems are quite vulnerable, if they're not being taken care, there are quite a lot of, the vulnerability that exists, which can be penetrated both by the internal user as well as the external user. Now, we can keep talking about it for the entire day, but the objective is that, how do we handle all of it, right? So when I say how do we handle it, the organization should be really aware of what they need to look at. Now, how do I look everything at one go? Now, if you ask me honestly, was the risk and compliance was not there earlier? The answer is no, right? Many companies were able to effectively manage risk and compliance in the past, but in today's world, it's getting quite inefficient in order to manage it manually, to consolidate all the global requirement, to identify the trace of user penetrating into the application. Now there are a lot of logs, right? A person tries to get to the system and tries to access her data, and he gets to know all the other data. Now, how do we ensure the sensitive data is being masked? So it's like the world of the concerns that we are into, right? So how do we handle it, right? That is where I think the GRC in today's world, the GRC were existing earlier. I would not say something new that has popped up in the last 2 years. It was there for quite a long, at least to my knowledge. Maybe Rajagopal can also add to that, with his own experience in the industry. But I think, in today's exposure to the risk and security concerns, and also, what is that an organization are, facing today, I think the GRC is again taking a churn in terms of, adding more value to the organization. Now, again, there are numerous GRC tools that we can see in the market. Now, the quite a famous one is Archer, right? So we have SAP GRC, we have Archer. There are many other tools in the market. So very obvious question that most of us today we know is that which one is better? That's again a big question. I'm not going to get into that today, but the SAP GRC, where it stands out compared to other GRC, is that into three components. One is it can automate, because of the reason it can connect itself with the ERPs, which is your SAP, ERP, HANA, ECC, or etc. Or it can also integrate with the other non-SAP platforms as well. Plus, it is not really a compliance tool. It also has various segments like risk management, audit management, cyber security management. Likewise, there are a few modules which helps the management to from a governance or risk compliance point of view, it's going to give them a lot of comfort. While there are other tools in the market which also has a similar set of modules, but its potential is that it can connect with the SAP ERP on its own, and also with the other ERPs as well. And also, it has a lot of functionalities in terms of how the users can mask it. And also it's very quick in terms of the response, and it's going to save a lot of time for the organization. So we're going to dive, deep dive into all of it in the upcoming slides. But maybe Rajan want to add something more as introduction before we move into the slides as such. Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Karthik. And basically, like as you all know, it all started with SOX compliance in 2002, and obviously, definitely, like now it's growing more and more into various, I would say, geometric progression of GRC. But as a GRC as a concept, if you really see, It is not something which can be standing alone or totally disconnected from your core ERP, whether it is Tally or even SAP S/4HANA latest version, whatever it could be as your core ERP. GRC as a concept can reside or can travel only effectively with your core ERP. So having said that, individuals have put in a lot of effort during late 90s and early 2000s to bring GRC as a concept, as you know, and also various organizations right from COSO and also various organizations and frameworks have worked a lot to bring GRC as a core concept for any organization, even though we are not going to touch much with the compliance part because that has a lot of smaller segments into it. But when it comes to the core governance and risk, we need not see GRC as a product per se. That is what I was just now talking to Karthik before we started the session. Forget that GRC is a product. It is not a product. It is neither a framework, but it is something which is embedded very thickly into your own core ERP. I would say like the dress on the skin. So like in a way, like you need to have that very clearly embedded in your core systems and processes before which you embark into a very clear kind of governance methodology or risk methodology. You all know, obviously, coming from an internal audit background, the three layers of defense or three lines of defense. Primarily, the first line of defense has to come within the organization and not from outside. Secondly, the senior management who manage the pestle or the various factors, political, economic, social, and other factors which affect the organization from a risk perspective. They need to hold that second line of defense. Similarly, the third line of defense alone can go to the audit committee or board or external regulators. So having said that, the first part, governance, has to reside within the core organization with every operating users and every end users and every type of business processes, be it automated, semi-automated or manual or hybrid, whether with interface to various external applications or is a standalone. How much ever you think about it, the core control has to start within the organization. So how do we do that in a manufacturing entity? Is basically we strengthen and structure our core enterprise before we get into the extended enterprise. If your core systems, processes, and user management and access controls and process management with respect to business processes are very strong, then obviously the second layer of defense with respect to the senior management, they will be able to focus on the risks, whether it is internal or external. Then the third line of defense will be even more easier to manage the audit committee or board or the external regulatory authorities. So this is the first 3 points which I wanted to mention. Don't separate GRC. Don't think about it as a product, but think it as part of your own core ERP or the organizational processes. Second, build 3 layers of defense and focus more on the core internal part. So this is the first, probably like very brief from a manufacturing or industry perspective, which I could give from a GRC point of view along with IT. Yeah, okay. You would like to add?
Yeah, I think we had a very good the overview about SAP GRC. We can so the SAP GRC platform. So as you can see, there are about 6 modules that we're gonna the platform has. One is about access control. I think it's quite a famous one about what is access control, which we're gonna manage the risk, and then it's also gonna manage the risk of the access provisioning, how the roads are gonna get added, and in terms of how the segregation of yeah, there was someone talking. Yeah. And then we also have something to do with the process control. Processes, to ensure that how do we have a ongoing compliance against the various risks that have been identified as part of the risk framework, which is going to be related to your, the business processes as well. And then we're also talking about the business integrity screening, which is more to do with the detects and prevents of fraud. For example, there are so this BIS tool is going to probably identify the fraud in each and every pattern of the data. It will track each and every activity and the transactional data that happens in SAP system or the other systems as well. And it will be able to identify the fraud basis the rules that we are configuring in the GRC system. And then we have the risk management, which is going to be like managing the entire risk basis the framework that we're going to create. It will also cover the risk appetite. It also will alert the some if there's going to be any sort of risk violation around it. We can download the report, and then we can also have a corrective actions, etc. And then we're also talking about the audit management. It's most to do with the the internal audit, tracking with the work plan, the state audit plan, the status, non-discrepancies, so sorry, the violations, and how do we close it to the closure. So likewise, we're gonna the audit management module is going to help us to track the entire progress of the internal audit. And then we do have a lot of analytics dashboards that we can look into it from the GRC, right from your the risk management and along with the access violations, and then you're going to talk about the cyber related the analytics reports. So there are quite a lot of the analytics reports that are available in SAP GRC. We will probably touch upon it for a few reports, but it's quite a vast topic. As I said, it is definitely not possible for us to cover all of it in probably a couple of hours, but we'll be focusing more in terms of access control and process control. We'll talk about BIS, risk management, and also the audit management, and we'll also talk about a few of the analytics reports that will be more helpful from a organization standpoint of view.
Just to touch base with access control, very briefly before Karthik gets into the presentation. Whenever we talk about the access control, okay, so the first thing comes to any user's mind is obviously whether there will be a limitation on my rights. So, whenever we implement any access control methodologies or implementation of anything around that with respect to user access management, the first thing we convince the users or even give comfort is that you are not going to lose any of your rights, but everyone will have the rightful access to what they need to know exactly. Because as you rightly know, like a person in process owner in purchases will not be able to access significantly anything with respect to sales or production. Now, what happens is like the other way around, the people who are having access to a particular information should not have access in excess of what they should do. So if we always emphasize this point whenever we implement a GRC or any, it's not necessarily SAP GRC, but any GRC platform, whenever you implement, the first question comes whether I will lose any of my rights. We need to convince or comfort the users that you are not going to lose anything. We are going to put better process controls so that the other side of it, no other person other than you, who is rightfully authorized to access your own information, has access to your information. So the coin has two sides. We always convince the users in this fashion first before we embark into implementing any access control methodologies. And I will touch base with the segregation of duties before which I'll leave it to Karthik just to touch base with the access control overview slide, so that I'll come back to segregation of duties again.
Yeah. So we are going to look into these themes of the key themes of SAP GRC is about the enterprise risk and compliance, The first part of it is, more to do with creating a framework, and also, with related to business process as well. And also, we can also track the control violations as part of the GRC solution. And you can also build a workflow tool. If a specific control is going to be, violated, you will be able to, create an alert system and then track it to the closure, investigate, and also assess, the risk because of it. And, you'll be able to, in a real time, you'll be able to address all of that. Now, along with it, you will also will be able to, screen the data, whatever is being integrated to SAP, where the data comes from a third-party system or, the various vendors or, the third parties that we have. While the data gets interfaced to SAP, this particular GRC will also will be, will help us out to analyze all the data through a data patterns what we create. And then it will also will alert if there are going to be any sort of fraudulent activities also. And this provides an independent assurance of the risk and compliance standard for the reason that all of the risk framework that you're going to create within the GRC tool, that will include all the global frameworks as well, right? So assuming an organization wants to create a enterprise risk management, right? So you're gonna consider the various frameworks that are required to be adhered because of your global presence. So thereby, this will help you to mitigate the various risks which may probably be a potential violation towards the compliance of various countries in a real-time basis. Now, moving on the right, you have an access governance, as Rajagopal explained. The access governance is going to help an organization to have a centered repository of the roles or the profiles that you would have created to provision and access. Now, the advantage of a GRC is that the biggest advantage is that it helps you to identify what are the specific the roles that can be assigned to a user. Basis is the role, basis is function. The SAP will be able to sense what sort of a data that he will have exposed to. See, over and above the segregation of duty that the GRC will help you to identify, the GRC also has another element in the access governance where it will be able to sense basis the role of a user, basis the profile of a user, basis the the object or rather the the team code that he's probably gaining access to, will it lead to much wider data than what he is required to see. For example, I am going to be the HR HR processing person where I'm going to create an employee ID. Now, as part of my role, I may be exposed to a payroll register where I can also see the compensation of what the employee has, which may or may not be required as part of my role that I'm playing as part of the team. So thereby, access governance has various variants which has helped for us to deep dive into, because mainly of the sensitive data issue that we are looking as on today's world, like masking the data, etc. So now moving on to the bottom on the left, we have cybersecurity and data protection. Now, the other aspect is that today everything is moved towards your mobile, handheld devices. Now, while the handheld devices are there are quite a lot of API that are being implemented to interface to your ERP system. Now, if you ask me honestly whether all of it are being taken care from a vulnerability management standpoint of view, the answer is yes. Because it's not that management is not taking care, but because of the emerging the vulnerabilities in today's world, tomorrow there could be some new vulnerability which may probably pop up, which we may not be in a position to quickly act on it to mitigate that. So thereby it requires to have a continuous monitoring of the vulnerabilities across your IT assets, right? So thereby the cybersecurity on one hand, it helps you to identify the vulnerabilities across all your IT assets on a real-time basis. And it also going to help you to protect the data at the asset level. For example, you may, as I said, you may have a mobile data, you may have a SAP, the ERP system which will not be exposed to internet. You have, your CRM, you have your SRM, and you have other, the SAP time and portals. You have various such SAP products and non-SAP products as well. But that is, the cybersecurity tool is going to help you to how to ensure that I, protect the assets as well. Now, and then you're gonna have a compliance with, the various security standard, which I spoke about in the enterprise risk and compliance. And I also said it's gonna identify the vulnerability, both static code and the dynamic code. In both the cases, it's gonna help you to identify the vulnerabilities and also the remote function call. Remote function call, I don't know how many of you on the call today are aware of SAP. These RFC functions are basically one which help you to integrate with your other systems. Now, in fact, we used to audit on this specific aspect to see how the passwords and the credentials are a clear text in all of these RFC function. That also becomes one of the the great point of where the hackers can gain access to probably hack the passwords and the IDs as well. But today there have been quite a lot of advanced techniques how they're going to hack it, but through RFC connections as well, you'll be able to view the password if it has not been encrypted. On the last one, the international trade management, is going to help you with all the import-export company. Talking more about the compliance towards security, confidentiality, privacy. There's also compliance related to the business process as well, right? So thereby, this is going to help you to ensure that you're tracking those risks as well and see whether you are compliant with those compliance too. So this is also part of this GRC too. So anything you want to add, Rajagopal?
Yeah. So very briefly again, with respect to the top two layers, what Karthik was mentioning, enterprise risk and compliance, and with respect to access governance. So to put it simply on the enterprise risk and compliance, there are 2 points, very key takeaways in this from a business and operational standpoint. First is like with respect to business operations, we generally do, as you know, like a basic risk and control matrix. Okay, whether how far it is complete, how far it is comprehensive enough. Forget about the auditors for a moment. So even for the internal management, whatever risks and controls we perceive, and we make a matrix and we make an SOP out of it, we see whether those controls are in place, whether it is a continuous one or a permanent one, or one time, or whether it is something ad hoc basis. So how much ever robust you put a risk and control matrix, still definitely it is never enough. Now GRC puts the boundary very clearly for all your business processes, whether the risks and controls which you have thought through is by and large enough or not. So I am putting it in plain English, but how the system does is something is phenomenally awesome, because it takes care of all the core operations which have been configured in your core ERP, be it anything, and any risks or controls revolving around that is automatically taken care and built in as a basically a risk mitigation model. Secondly, coming to the compliance part of it, obviously most of the ERPs have certain inbuilt compliance aspects, many of them are not. The regulatory compliance obviously is something which you need to input into, and obviously system doesn't understand that unless there is a very clear compliance model built into that. Obviously SAP comes out with every sort of compliance with the separate licenses and so many other things, but the core ERP like S/4HANA obviously comes with basically regulatory compliance requirements built into the system itself. Secondly, Karthik was talking about third-party softwares. The most vulnerable thing with respect to risks, most of us would have connected, if not with anything else, definitely 2-3 areas we obviously connect. One, with the government portal with respect to our electronic invoicing, e-way generation, and definitely bank related aspects. Now, whenever you connect with the third-party systems, it is fairly risk-free if the information goes out from your core ERP to that third-party system. But if data comes from the other systems, and if it is a mutual handshake, then you need to be extremely cautious, and all these enterprise risk management systems, including SAP GRC, has a very robust inbuilt control with respect to starting from a age-old encryption model including a host-to-host model, till the latest one with respect to even if you go for RPA, which Karthik touched upon, even if you go with RPA or all this IoT, ML and everything which has almost now matured enough or maybe has gone into the decay stage already. But still, most of these GRC products comes with a very good robust control, especially in case of mutual handshake and data sharing. Now, this is another very critical reason why organizations need to look into GRC as a framework or a model, not again going to any specific products, but as a framework or a model. Definitely this has to be looked into very seriously. Third point, independent assurance of risk and compliance. Now, GRC comes with a global platform, and whether it is an industry solution, it could be you might be in a pharma industry, or you might be in the oil industry, you might be in any other industry for that matter. All those GRCs, as I told very clearly, it's like the cloth on the skin. So they are fairly embedded within your ERP. And when that happens, obviously the risk and compliance standards with respect to the core ERP is very high. So that is another reason why we need to look into that. Coming to the other bracket of access governance, again, I will touch base very briefly on the information access and data usage by specific users. For example, like nowadays, the access limitations are pretty niche. In those earlier cases, the job description itself would say like this person is for billing, this person is for invoice verification, he is a stores guy. Now those concepts are completely gone. And now we go with process groups like lead to cash, are commonly called as order to cash, or procure to pay, or in SAP you call it as source to pay. So those kind of design to deliver or record to report or maintain and operate. So we go with the process mode nowadays. So what happens? It is very good in the way of improving your productivity, but at the same time, if there is one lacuna in one of the processes, then the whole chain fails. So this access governance looks at more from a process angle, process group angle, rather than individuals. So whether there is a good control overall with respect to design to deliver and including monitoring and maintaining your assets, or otherwise like individuals are compromised with excess access, and whether they are creating any risks in the overall system. So this access governance model has completely changed. Again, coming to the segregation of duties very briefly, now organizations, especially with SAP, in SAP GRC, of course, we are covering that in the latest slide, but basically SAP GRC is an ocean if you take the segregation of duty as a particular topic. Now, this SAP GRC has lakhs of controls, at least if not thousands, very usefully available. It has more than a lakh or two controls. The first topic will be like whether to deactivate all those and just apply actually what you need, rather than using all those lakh plus controls. So basically, like the organizations who implement GRC, they actually unlearn so many things. Then they go with a zero-based approach and rather build from the scratch, I would say, process group wise. This order to cash process needs only this much access. This procure to pay needs only this much. And this only this much attitude goes for all the key processes, including your period and financial reporting, and also property, plant and equipment processes. So when we implement these zero-based SAP GRC solutions, it comes with a very robust segregation of duties, and system itself is able to throw a lot of conflicts very clearly and apparently. For example, any person's having a sales order, a creation and also release. Obviously, system immediately says, boss, you have a segregation of duty conflicts over there. And also the concept of sensitive access. For example, you don't trust everybody in your organization to make the payments. So obviously, like the payment run or something like that, which are basically very sensitive, those are classified very clearly in native GRC as sensitive, and while you configure that itself for a person, system double checks whether you really need to give access to this person for payment. Only when you say yes, it goes ahead, and similarly the case with segregation of duties. Maybe I'll touch base with one more perspective of segregation of duties going forward.
Yeah, next slide. So we're going to look into the enterprise risk and compliance. These are some of the sub processes that we can look at. So SAP process control, as we spoke about it. So SAP process control, it helps the management to identify the risk and also probably to monitor the risk in the real-time process. Now I'll give an example to the SAP process control. One could be more to do with segregation of duty, right? Which Rajagopal also spoke about. Is that segregation of duty? We try to create a rule within the system, but how do we ensure if something has been violated, right? So thereby we try to create an the alerts for the segregation of duty, through which we'll be able to identify has someone really violated or not violated. And then we also talk about the configurations, right? So we create a configuration in the application basis various policies and procedure. Now, how do we ensure that the configurations are in line to the baseline standards or a policies or a procedure? So thereby, it helps you to create an alert if some specific configuration has been modified or changed. It also lets you know, who has changed it and when was it actually, modified. On the other hand, you also talk about the continuous monitoring also. Continuous monitoring will help you to identify the data, right? The transaction data, activities performed by the user. So these are some of the activity process level, which you will be able to, track it from a risk perspective, right? So this again comes from your risk framework, which will help the management to identify what are some of the inherent risks that, the processor that has, and basis which will be able to create the rules, and thereby it also will give you an alert what is going wrong in the process and the related activities performed by the users. Now, talking on the SAP risk management again. So SAP risk management is again like why you wanted to probably adhere to various global standards, right? So SAP GRC also has a inbuilt control framework, which will help you to identify what are some of the controls that you may want to consider. But it may vary from a industry to industry, may vary from an organization to an organization. But SAP risk management helps you to, as we spoke in the previous slide, it helps you to on a real-time basis, it helps you to understand has any control been violated, because this particular module will be integrated with the process control. It will integrate with your the CCM solution as well. This also will be integrated with various other sub modules that enables you to identify whether a control has been violated or not violated. That is the biggest advantage of the SAP GRC, which it can integrate and give you a sense that whether a control actually as on today has been violated or not violated. So what we can do with that is quickly mitigate the control deficiency and also track it to the closure. On the audit management, again, it's going to be more on the internal audit, which we spoke about, right from the scoping to the planning, and then tracking the audit status, and in tracking the real time, tracking the non-compliances, and also mitigating it, the procedures what you're going to mitigate it. So it helps you to put the entire internal audit charter on the GRC and track it, the entire phases of the internal audit and the progress of that. Now, again, you have something called SAP Regulation Management by Greenlight. It's again one of the the beautiful tool which helps you to integrate with the non-SAP systems as well. While you also looking at the regulation management that you need to probably focus upon, it also helps you to identify in terms of what are the regulatory compliance that are required to be managed. In terms of your inventory management, in terms of your change management, etc. And it also going to help you to receive an automatic updates in terms of what are some of the the non-confirmations in terms of the regulatory aspect, while you're also trying to deal with the data which may be which should be a non-SAP platform. And then we're also talking about the business insights of SAP, which want to identify and help you to track all the fraudulent activities by tracking your data, the transaction data activities. We're going to talk about it all of it in detail in upcoming slides. But this all of these 5 constitute to the enterprise risk and compliance.
Yeah, thanks, Karthik, on that quick introduction on that. Basically, the SAP process control is what I will dwell upon in this slide. As you know, like while we build the business process, we have the BPML, the business process management list. Whenever we implement SAP, so it carries a lot of key processes, sub processes, and you will even go up to L4 processes. For example, if there is order to cash or procure to pay, in payment also you get into various types of payments, and within the automatic payments or manual payments, and within automatic payments you have so many other controls built into the system. But what SAP process control basically does is, like while you configure itself, you can create the entire configuration as a project. As you know, most of the SAP connected people know that while you do the configuration, it is possible to build it as a project and do configuration within that. And SAP, with all its pluses and minuses, still it's an elephant to deal with. So while you do configuration, even for a very normal scenario, you cannot escape doing not less than at least 700 to 800 different types of configurations for a mid-sized enterprise. So while you do that, things may work, okay? So it doesn't stop you from transacting, but what assurance do you have that one process for which you have configured doesn't automatically conflict with another best practice or another required practice in another configuration? That we don't know. Even best and best of SAP experts don't know that until you start transacting. Now, by the time you start transacting, the impact of changing any configuration, the cost is going to soaringly high. It is going to end up in significant damages unless you find it at the right time. So process control, which we have also briefly attempted and demonstrated to our management and briefly done also with respect to very brief processes, and some of our group companies have also done this process control, are able to find the benefit with respect to conflicting guidelines or conflicting configurations or even conflicting financial postings coming out at a much later point in time, if not detected at an earlier stage. So SAP process control embeds within the ERP itself all the required controls. While you do one configuration, system automatically checks for any inconsistency or anomaly with another configuration and alerts you then and there before we get into the live environment. And risk management, audit management and all are basically SAP products, which Karthik basically touched upon that. With respect to risk management, again, you may need to know that the enterprise risk management framework is by and large wholly covered in this SAP risk management. It's a relatively a recent product and goes very well with the process control, because the process control by and large seeks any conflicts between various business processes, but any risks associated with that is configurable within risk management. So the first two together go very well with you with your configuration of the risk and control matrix, and the system obviously provides you excellent dashboards on all these things. And the CCM, the continuous control monitoring, is the core takeaway from this. We implement the control. It is like cleaning up your office during a IS audit and then forgetting about it. It's not like that. The CCM gives you enormous amount of continuous monitoring, and sometimes you can even set the levels to be prohibitive. So if you continue a particular process violation, system will stop providing you the right access or even cut down the processes after a point in time, so that you don't continue to encourage that risk to make your organization vulnerable.
Yeah. So moving to next one is on the cyber security, so the access governance part. Now, I think we spoke in length about an SAP access control. Well, quickly we'll give some example with respect to a financial service sector to a manufacturing service sector. Now, access control, how it's going to help you is, with respect to assuming there is a person, who manages a vendor master, right, in the manufacturing sector. Predominantly, it will be dealt at the plant level. Now, while a person, who is trying to create a vendor master versus a person, who can manage a vendor master, there's a thin layer of difference between both of them. While, if you're going to provide access for a person who is creating it, versus a person who is managing it can also probably create an, the vendor line item, that is going to probably lead to a conflict because a person at the plant level doesn't require to create any specific vendor, especially on the bank details, or the payment terms, etc., which is more predominantly will be centralized at, most of the head offices. So likewise, there could be a predefined rule set basis the role of a person, the location of the person, basis their title, right? What is the level of access that he is required to have, right? So that to that extent, you will be able to deep dive in SAP access control module. And we're talking about SAP cloud identity, the access governance part of it. It is going to help you to integrate between a on cloud versus a on-premise server. So that is one of the beautiful module where this SAP will be GRC be able to help to bridge between these two categories of the applications. And then we are also talking about the dynamic authorization management by the green light, which is going to really help for a large financial institution in terms of how do we identify the violation of the access control. For example, as somebody has actually violated the control by going and performing a transaction, right? To that extent, this SAP access violation management will help you to give a dashboard and also give you a report on these violations. We'll talk about it in detail, but just to know what it is all about. And SAP identity management, I think all of us are aware what it is all about. And then we have a single sign-on identity access management as well. So typically, this SAP access governance, all of us, would know one part is that it will help you to streamline the segregation of duty or manage the roles and the profits in a better way. But I think the access governance has much more beyond it because of the emerging risk what we have. So it goes deep dive to connect you to various systems. It also identifies the access violations. It's going to give you a detailed report about it, and then it's also going to help you with how we can have the single sign-on across various SAP products also, right? Yeah. If you want to add further,
yeah. So a couple of points revolving around the roles and authorizations and segregation of duties. So as you all know, like typically in the manufacturing organization, the SOD has to start from a role-based authorization, which again has to start more from a HR perspective. So unless we have a very clear roles defined by HR and including it could be multiple roles or profiles, the same person can do multiple roles, obviously, but it has to start from HR and you define the roles properly, and then you come to the segregation of duties in a much niche fashion, and also as Karthik was mentioning at a very, very micro level. For example, a person creating the purchase order and releasing it, or releasing it and making a GRAN, or making a GRAN and making invoice verification, or invoice verification and then the payment. All those two subsequent processes in a particular process group, maybe procure to pay or order to cash. So those kind of anomalies will be captured by this access governance model very effectively if we really start from the rules clearly defined by HR and percolated to the last level of key process or sub-process. Similarly, couple of points on the identity management. As you know, this IIM identity and access management now very effectively deployed by most of the organizations, but the starting point again is with HR. See, the SAP SuccessFactors, as you know, like most of the companies who have gone with SAP SuccessFactors as their SAP platform for HRMS have tied up with identity and access management. which helps you. For example, a person gets into the organization, you need to give access to some 25 applications in one day. He has to travel the next day itself. He has to apply something else. He has to access SAP. He has to access some other systems. All those 25 applications needed to be accessed on a single day. Or take another scenario while the employee separates from the organization and he needs to be dispensed with access with all those applications within few hours. Then what happens is like you need to use SAP identity and access management very effectively along with any of your HR platform. So that's the way this whole thing works. If we have a very good tie-up with the HRMS platform with respect to JD and other things, till the time the employee separates, and with respect to identity at different levels, he may be rotated, he may have access to one application today and tomorrow with another application, he may be clubbed with the 2-3 applications, he may be bifurcated with his current profile, and all those can be very effectively managed with SAP IIM and also with the access control. And again, the last point on segregation of duties. I was mentioning about sensitive access, like giving payment access to every one of you in the organization. That doesn't happen, right? So what happens is like whenever a person tries to access certain particular sensitive transaction, obviously like process control and access control will stop him. That's a very basic stuff. But when it comes to segregation of duties, there are multiple levels of segregation of duties also you can put. We technically call as the AND condition, like he is having access to this transaction and another transaction and another transaction. Like this, you can go up to even 5 or 6 levels effectively, so that in a large organization, you prohibit the access to any particular transaction, not only with respect to its sensitivity, but also conflicting with any other combination, maybe 3 or 4 levels of conflicts also, you will be able to prohibit at the right first time itself.
Yeah, great. So moving on to the cyber security and the data protection.
Yes.
I think this. Okay, yeah. So moving to next on the cyber security and the data protection part of it. So we're gonna be, there are a few modules to it. One is on SAP Enterprise Threat Detection. As I said, this particular module will help you to identify, various threats that are existing in the various assets, right? So it also helps you to identify the vulnerability that are existing in, the various assets in a real-time basis. So that will help the management to arrest if there are any open vulnerabilities that are required to be, taken care, and thereby that will help them, to arrest it. And second thing on the digital rights management by NextLab, the digital rights management by NextLab is going to help them to how do we protect the SAP, the assets, right? How do we ensure that assets are secure? On the other hand, it also helps you to identify, how the data are also secured within those particular assets. Now, how do we do it? Is basis the, the risk assessment or the, that we do across all the assets. And I also identify what sort of a vulnerability that, are existing these particular IT assets. And basis that, we do monitor it on a periodical basis to see if there are any specific vulnerability that has been breached as on today. Now we're also talking about a UI field masking. It also came in because the sensitive data access, while there are quite a lot of data, which it's been exposed to, for example, in an analyst, right, within an organization, he is trying to probably, look for a specific data to prepare an MIS report, while he's also been exposed to the other whole lot of a data which is not required. So thereby, it helps you, to mask a specific column or a data, typically like how we have a credit card, right? All the first initial numbers are being masked, when the last 4 digits are being available. Likewise, across all the master data, within the organization, including your security data, be your Aadhaar, be your name, be your date of birth, phone number, etc. the typical data will also be masked. It helps you to mask those relevant data. Very interesting part is called a UA logging. What is UA logging is because it helps you when especially there's a security incident that happens. This UA logs will help you to track down the ways of the user interaction with your system. Now, for example, you're gonna click a mouse, right? You're gonna move your mouse. You're gonna probably go to a specific the folder. So this UA login will log all the activities what a user does, right? From he logging in until what all activities that he does in the system, all of it will get logged. Now, what is the benefit of this? Tomorrow there is going to be any sort of a cyber related issue or system related issue, right? So thereby it will help you to understand what has gone wrong, what is the pattern of the user, why has it gone wrong. It also helps on the other way to understand the user pattern and thereby the activities what he does to see that now how we can improve the efficiency of the IT resources. Now we also have looking into the code vulnerability analysis. We have a static code, we have a dynamic code. Now, basis the dynamic code, there are quite a lot of these specific vulnerability that exists today, which helps you for you to track it and identify that. And we also have something called the SAP Fortify the micro focus. What SAP Fortify does is we'll be talking only about the ABAP code. So there are other systems or tools which are mostly on non-SAP as well, right? So thereby this SAP Fortify module helps you also to track down the vulnerabilities that are probably where SAP is being linked to the non-SAP systems, which helps you to identify the vulnerabilities. Also similar patterns, what you're trying to look at SAP, it also gives you a kind of a dashboard. What is it to do with the other non-SAP systems as well, right? Because again, a wider area, I'm trying to give you an overview about what these are. I can talk about each of these sessions for entire 2-3 hours, but I'm trying to put forth whatever I can. But any questions on this, we're happy to take it up. Yeah, next slide. So I think there's a lag in the system. Maybe. Yeah. So next slide on the international trade management, as I spoke in the previous slide. So we're talking of this from a holistic of a security and governance part of it, but governance also includes the business related risk and compliance also. For example, assuming you want to open a warehouse in Karnataka, right? Or you want to open a warehouse in Mumbai, there are certain state-wise regulations, state-wise laws, which are also required to be taken care in order for you to comply with the local regulations as well. So thereby, this GRC tool also includes these specific regulations also, depends upon the business process, depends upon the international countries that you are trading with. So likewise, it puts you the whole lot of framework also as part of this, which will help you to identify where is your compliance towards these frameworks as from business process standpoint of view. We're not going to touch upon it today. We'll be touching more in terms of the enterprise risk and compliance and the access governance as on today. And hopefully, we should be able to cover that another 1 hour's time. We'll see to it. Yeah. So before we go getting into the detailed sessions, maybe a thought from the participants today. How many of you in the participant list today are actually using SAP GRC or any other GRC for that matter as part of your organization? Maybe you want to unmute it, we can unmute it, or you want to put in a chat box. You're happy to take a sense of the entire participants today. Deepika, maybe you want to check in a chat? Yeah. I don't know if my question was audible. So how many of you in your organizations, respective organization, are using SAP GRC? If not SAP GRC, are you using any other GRC as part of your organization today? I can see, I don't see the chat. I can see only the 4 numbers.
There's a question on the chat.
So we'll take that next. Deepika, you were there? Saravanan and Deepika.
Karthik, yes, Karthik, your question is audible and it's very clear. So
Yeah, allowing participant to ask questions.
The chat box is on, so we'll wait for some time.
If there are no answers, that means nobody is using the GRC. Maybe I should consider it that way. Because if I would have been a participant, I would be so enthusiastic in saying I'm using this GRC. Yes, sir. The Ravi sir has raised his hand. Yes, sir.
Swami Kumar is listening.
Okay.
Karthik, but what are the types of GRCs? No, what is the impact on that? It depends on the organization, right?
Yeah, so basically, basically the types of GRC is not much different. Because it only depends on the size of the organization and the complexity of business processes, and also the number of roles and the number of users. So as you could see, like in a very small organization, it could be 5 or 6 roles. Am I audible?
Some background noise. Sometimes have to be.
So it could be the number of roles and the number of users, and also the complexity of the business processes that will define the types of GRC. But basically, all these in the current environment revolves around these 4 areas, Shravi.
Hi, sir. Amit.
Yeah, Mr.
Hi, good evening. I'm working with Profeti Manual Group, and we are using SAP GRC.
Yeah.
And it's about 5 years back when we implemented the SAP GRC, and I was part of the team who worked on a project get clean and stay clean in terms of the conflict of interest, in terms of transactions, T codes.
Yes.
So there was a project called get clean, stay clean, so that there is no conflict of interest among us, the users, with regard to the SAP transactions. Suppose somebody is working on vendor master data transaction. That person is not supposed to have the invoice processing right. The person who has invoice processing right should not have the right to initiate the disbursements.
Yes.
So we worked on that project.
Okay.
Good. So how is your overall experience with SAP GRC for the benefit of the participants?
Sir, being certified internal auditor and a part of the finance team, I was in the core team where we do the overall analysis of the authorization of the users, and took out the recommendation of the SAP GRC in terms of the analysis and review it manually. Then we decide what sort of mitigation we should do. Suppose if somebody has, say, some sort of JD approved by the HR, that person give the the authorization, sensitive authorization, basis the JD approved by the HR.
Yeah.
But again, there was a mitigation strategies where the internal audit team or the IT team had discussion with at the various level with the HR or the functional team, that this particular person having the dual authorization or sensitive authorization, we should transfer this sort of transaction from this particular person to another person, so that there is no conflict of interest. So even after giving the sensitive authorization, there was monitoring from the IT side, SAP GRC side, from the IIA side, so that there is no there is no risk afterward.
Thanks for that feedback, Swami.
See, to my, there are numerous advantages of having GRC, but the best part is it really control well all the authorization landscape. That is the best part of it.
Yeah, true. Sure.
And if I'm not wrong, this was the only tool available at time, because this GRC was developed from some another tool. Maybe you know this, the Virsa.
Yes.
You know Virsa?
Yeah,
Virsa was a tool which actually acquired by SAP, Then they converted the Virsa into the SAP GRC. At the time of the, the Enron scandal, where the Enron scandal took place, and the organization were looking for some tool. So there was one tool called Virsa, and that was taken over by SAP. Then SAP converted that tool into the SAP GRC afterward.
As you know, like from 2002, once the SOX compliance basically became very vibrantly mandatory. From that time, SAP has gotten into this space very strongly. And you are right, most of the current tools which are available in SAP are acquired. Now SAP has become more of an assembly company, so they have started buying a lot of tools, right, from Ariba, Concur, and
Even the Micro Focus.
So most of the tools, success factors, everything, even their
At that particular time, at that particular time, when the some 2000, 2002, when Enron scandal took place, to my belief, to my knowledge, the Virsa was the only tool which was having this GRC features. So SAP had their eyes on the Virsa and their market. So they experienced that this tool is really good in terms of implementing the GRC and authorization control. So they took over this.
Yeah. Good. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your insights, Rajagopal.
Thanks,
Okay.
sir.
Thank you. Yeah. So moving to the next slide. Yeah. Now we'll deep dive into the access control functions and feature. I'm not gonna demonstrate the entire feature as such, but I'll touch upon some of the core objective of the access control functions as part of GRC, and what are some of the benefits that as a user that we will be able to achieve from this. Yeah. So let's go probably in a clockwise direction. The first is on the maintain roles. I think all of us will agree with that. It's a core part of the access control, where SAP GRC creates a central repository where all the roles that are being created, etc., will be moved to a central repository. From a central repository, the entire role management and the provisioning of the user, deactivation of the users, all of it can be done, right? So on the other hand, now for example, you're talking about a specific sensitive roles, right? You will be able to create much more layers in terms of security, how those sensitive roles can also be protected. Now moving on to the provision of user accounts, as I said, automatically you'll be able to create or deactivate the user accounts. While user access has been modified, you will be able to identify is there a conflict to it, and thereby what are the real-time mitigation control that can be put in place to mitigate the risk of that. So likewise, you will be able to identify that in the real time. And over and above it, if there's going to be a violation of it, you will be able to identify that as well. Now, on the other hand, analyze the risk. So this access control GRC is very flexible. Now you will be able to create the multiple roles, multiple rules, and also as the risk is going to increase because of its interface to quite a lot of external world systems or external world the third parties etc. So you'll be able to analyze those risks and probably create a SOD matrix what should be fitting into a good GRC control in the organization. And then you also certify the authorization, which exactly is going to be more like where specific access assignments are are required or not. For example, you would create multiple roles in the system, but not all of it could be actually put into the use. So this GRC also help you to identify, is there any dormant roles in the system? Is there any inactive users in the system? It also helps you to identify how many users are having this sensitive access to a specific object and the roles as well. So likewise, it also will help you to certify whether each and every access level, whether it is good enough or probably some cleanup is required to be done. And also on the monitoring the privilege, as I said earlier, it helps you to track the violations to the privilege what has been assigned, whether the person has probably assigned something else, and how he is able to probably have the proper SOD control in the place, and if the violation is going to happen, can download the report and then take appropriate action. So likewise, access control right from the role creation until the activity gets performed, you will be able to go through the entire journey of what all that is you required to be taken care.
Yeah, just to add a couple of points which Karthik was explaining. Very quickly, one is like this needs to be a continuous exercise. When I say continuous exercise, like it's not you do it daily, but at least on a defined periodicity, if you are able to do that, then it adds value to a large extent. Because most of the companies do this first time very perfectly, but lose the control over a period of time when the roles change, users change, multiple access violations happen unnoticed. So like this has to be a continuous exercise, if not quarterly, at least biannual, you need to perform this access control review in a much more structured way. Second, the point mentioned by Karthik on the redundant roles. Okay, this is one interesting area which most organizations miss out. If you normally take one SAP instance, for any users, you may find it interesting that that person has thousands of transactions being authorized to transact, whereas he may be using 20 to 30 or max 50 transactions, even in a given daily, weekly, monthly, or even annual basis. So what happens is like, why should we restrict those redundant transactions when that person is not using it? Still, inadvertently, once in a blue moon, that person logs into the system, that carries out something which will be creating a lot of inconsistency with the data. Then what happens is like it becomes terribly difficult to modify that, because the modification process also might not have been thought through or frequently encountered. Then it becomes very difficult to change that or reverse that damage, whatever could have happened. So continuous monitoring is one, the CCM. Second is like a review of all the redundant access, and the objective has to be like as Mr. Amit was mentioning very rightly, we should get clean and be clean continuously. So that is one very, very critical objective the access control manager should have.
Yeah.
Yes.
This is okay. So the very good question is, why a GRC access control required, right? So I don't want to talk about, what is there on the slide. I think we spoke about in length, but I will talk about the process, right? How a GRC access control is going to make you more efficient. Now, the very first aspect of it is that it will review the user access job optimization, which means that there is a kind of a job within GRC which will monitor the efficiency of this particular access management as part of the SAP. Now, while it's going to optimize the resources for a module for the access assignment from access assignment, also that activity monitoring, on the other hand, is also going to monitor the specific the deactivation of the users. On the other hand, it's going to keep on monitoring constantly on all the activity that a specific role is performing. So it is going to optimize the job to ensure that there is a proper resources being assigned to all the activities. So thereby it ensures that there's always the peak availability of the resources to get the job done. Thereby it does not stop the specific activity because of lack of resources that are available in the system. Now, on the second part of it, we also talk about the repository sync. As I said in the previous slide, the GRC has a central repository where it takes all the rows, all the assignments, it moves to a central repository from where it actually performs all the tasks. But then how do we ensure that it is syncing up with SAP HANA, it's syncing up with the objects that have been created with respect to the T codes that have been created, the programs that have been created. So this GRC will have a repository sync on a periodical basis to ensure that it is probably it's been up to date on a probably it depends on how quickly you want to probably sync up with that repository. Then we have LDAP sync for a single sign-on. We also have a mass role methodology. This is again one of the new concept I would appreciate is that updating in the mass role methodology. For example, if I want to update a specific object which has been probably depleted, the specific role is being moved off, I can probably update it across all the the roles, whichever has a particular object. I can probably update that. And then firefighter, I think most of us in today's world should be aware who is being used to using SAP. The firefighter actually helps you to minimize the user trying to access to SAP Start or SAP On. On the integration part, one of the biggest advantage of SAP GRC is that it tries to integrate with all the SAP products from the Fiori apps to the various other the SAP applications integrated, and thereby the resources are being probably managed very well to give you the real-time data and also the dashboards for you to have a better understanding on what's going around in the GRC part.
A couple of points to add up on the second vertical, the integration part. Again, I am coming back to touch basing with my original statement when we started the session. A GRC is not a separate tool, even though it can be sold and purchased separately. But basically, it's neither a framework, but it has to be embedded within your SAP ERP or any other ERP. So having said that, the other 2-3 points which Karthik mentioned, it goes very well with SAP SuccessFactors. As you know, SAP SuccessFactors is the HR management platform, again owned and procured and now deployed by SAP across various global countries, global organizations. It goes very well with the SAP SuccessFactors, right from the onboarding of employees and till the separation or termination of that particular engagement. It goes very well because in terms of as normally we say, like even in your travel, till the time you check out from your hotel, till the last moment the billing is very clearly monitored like that. In a separation, especially till the last moment that employee carries out any transactions, that audit trail needs to be very clearly understood, and also the footprint has to be there. So the identity and access management clubbed with this SuccessFactor goes very well in SAP GRC. Again, the second point is on the Fiori apps. As most of you know, SAP Fiori is not a separate product. It comes with SAP S/4HANA. The S/4HANA is given one another peeping window. The SAP Fiori is nothing but a peeping window into S/4HANA. However, S/4HANA, like in its own traditional way, the screens are not very jazzy still, even though like now it is still a portal platform. Fiori app gives you a very good view of the entire S/4HANA. Fiori has various features with respect to having data sheets within the Fiori app itself, and workflows can be developed in Fiori. You can have a very minimal, not a too jazzy like a Tableau or Power BI, but still a very basic analytics can be developed with respect to Fiori. And obviously, like all the transactions of SAP can be accessed through Fiori also. Now, having said that, with respect to this access control perspective, the entire access analysis for SAP Fiori apps need to be performed with respect to like the users who have access to S/4HANA also. Even though it will not be different, but what they access and through S/4HANA, what they access through SAP Fiori, whether they are rightfully accessing the right information, that is another topic the GRC manager needs to look into. One more point is like SAP Fiori also has a lot of inbuilt apps with respect to GRC also. That is another way of looking at it. So the access analysis for SAP Fiori is one, access analysis through SAP Fiori apps is another one. So both are available, which most of the organizations have started using in a much more elegant fashion.
Yeah, great. So we'll move on to the process control function. I see some questions on the chat. Maybe we have another 35 minutes. We'll quickly finish up a topic and then we can take up all the questions that are in the chat and the Q&A box. Yeah. So on the SAP process control, so again, as I said, the SAP process control is predominantly being used to track the activities that are being performed in the various processes. Right from what I said in terms of the transactions, segregation of duty, configurations, that whether to see whether it's in line to the policy or not. So keeping those examples in the mind, so the first part will be on document, standardize the internal control documentation, because now most of us the internal control, we may miss out to capture the root cause of the control deficiency. We may not capture what could be the risk, the vulnerabilities or rather the risk threshold if because of a specific control has been violated from a mitigation standpoint of view, and sharing of compliance in the control structures across regulations and organization, collaborative policy, maintenance, and the approval. So these are some of the documents that can be at a larger level can be taken care in SAP GRC. And then the plan, so the risk and compliance can also define you what will be the scope. For example, you're looking at an audit standpoint of view. What will be the scope of the audit? What are some of the test strategies? And it can also help you to create a workflow. As I said in the earlier slide, if a control is going to be violated, then it helps you to create a workflow which will help you to create an alert and also get the respective mitigation or responses and the root cause and document all of it. Defining and schedule the CCM rules. I think Rajagopal spoke in length about the CCM and importance of having the CCM in a review on a periodical basis. Distributing the policies and related surveys to see how effectively we can create the rules, how effectively we can keep on modifying or create additional workflows in the GRC as such. On the performance monitoring, CCM for configurations, master data, transaction changes. These are some of the important attributes. You can add something more also. Automatic routing of exceptions for the workflow, which I spoke about. Manual control performance, which collected evidence available to the testers. On the other hand, evaluate part of it. We can evaluate the existing scenario of all the control by creating a lot of surveys from various stakeholders to understand what do they feel from the dashboards that are getting generated, from the compliance that are getting generated. So we can take a lot of surveys to get the feedback and see how we can improve it. And also it's going to reduce your manual testing, rather we're going to rely more on the automatic test of effectiveness. And also more to the workflow driven. So once something goes wrong, you'll have an alert and it's going to be the inbox for you to log in and then address it. And then reports and dashboards. The audit trails is one of the key factors of the GRC. It creates a lot of audit trails across all the activities, all the changes, what the user does across. You have also CCM, which based on specific rules, it will track all the activities to validate against the specific rules. So likewise, all the activities in the GRC will get tracked. It will be available for you to download and investigate further. We spoke about the UI logging. That's going to help you to track right from a user logging into the system until all that he does will get logged and also sign off on surveys and the certifications.
Yeah. I think Karthik very fairly covered almost all the critical points. I'll just touch base with a couple of more. See, the internal control documentation is a very, very big topic over here. If you see the document part, it starts from maintenance of the policies, procedures, guidelines, and policy approvals. You can use a whole lot of features in the SAP S/4HANA latest ERP platform also, and tag that with the GRC controls, be it internal compliance or an external compliance. Many companies have even tagged this with even to the extent of bank guarantees and various other contingent liabilities which might come up. So those level of tagging at a particular document level need not be a financial document completely. Still, it could be a logistics document, it could be a financial document, it could be a personal document, and how it is getting tagged with external regulations And also it need not be external when I say only the regulators, but with respect to bankers and other agencies also. This policy maintenance, various levels of approvals and workflows, and also like complete audit trail footprint is possible with respect to GRC. This is one area which I wanted to touch base. Second, with respect to dashboards, it has gone much beyond what any organization would normally even require. Okay, but however, the reports and dashboards provide at a micro level of at the document level audit trails is one, but how the overall control itself with respect to even data, master data, transactional data, or any other external data which you might have kept it as a repository, how this whole thing changes. Of course, SAP master data management is a big topic, separate and separately managed, but still, how that footprint happens between various applications, whether it is your innate S/4HANA or whether it is your allied applications. And Karthik was talking about the RFCs, the remote function calls, with respect to other applications which are connected to your core ERP, where the footprint occurs and how this is going to impact your organization with respect to master data and transactional data, and what are all the key trends. Okay, this is one very major topic. For example, like the violations or maybe near to violations happening in one function. It could be some supply chain function or R&D function. So those kind of near to violation happening in a particular division or user group or role might seek your attention so that the audit trails are very effectively used. These are all things unimaginably built over last 4 or 5 years in GRC with respect to process controls. And as I was mentioning, like the risk and control matrix with respect to business processes across various process groups, be it order to cash or lead to cash or design to deliver. So all those things having got embedded over here into the whole process control itself, you are having a plethora of dashboards in a way that you are able to control your core processes. You are able to take the footprints for the benefit of your auditors. You are able to even foresee based on the trends and other things where you need to focus next month or next day or next 1 hour, where there might be a particular risk springing up. So these are all some very effective recent dashboards which are coming out of SAP Process Control of GRC.
Thank you, Rajagopal. Now, some of the objectives on the process control is to identify the key business process to help you to bring more efficiency rather than trying it across all the process. You can also look at critical regulatory mandates because there are quite a lot of regulatory mandates, and then you can also focus when you're on the higher risk because that is what you would require to address it on an immediate basis. And then your second part, provide continuous insights into the status of the compliance and the control. It helps you to always have a transparent view of the controls in terms of the process, what's happening around, and also it'll help you to identify the violations and what is the acceptance of a specific policy and the the people, the control people who are performing the control, CCM you have, also the issue status. It also helps you to the compliance and business process quality at the right cost, because today too much of technology investment happens. Now, if you don't have a right the control over those assets, rather the technology that we're using today, is going to put the management at a high risk. So thereby it always necessary that we ensure that we improve our compliance with respect to technology, no matter what technology we are using in today's world, but also ensure that it does not lead to the overburn on the regulatory penalties, etc. So thereby it helps you to bring the right the best practices, which can in turn get translated to a right good control environment, thereby help the management to achieve a better compliance standards in the organization.
Yeah, one smaller example, pretty small example, but still very effectively impacting most of the businesses. I was talking about the bank guarantee. So like if your transporter doesn't have a bank guarantee, what is the risk you have on your business? He or the agreement with the bankers or there is a tripartite agreement which needs to be revised or maybe appended or maybe even extended, and you have forgotten to do that. Those kind of fundamental things, if it is embedded with your core configuration and the processes, then it is nothing like that. So this process control with respect to regulatory and other aspects also, even if it is environmental compliances. For example, it could be your environmental certificate, or in case of your product needs to, if you are a car manufacturer, you need to get all the emission related and homologation related certificates on a periodicity with respect to each of the model you produce. Now those come also as part of a compliance matrix within the core business process itself, not as a standalone risk or compliance activity, but as part of the core process, which you can effectively utilize. Yeah.
Next one, yeah. So on the key benefits of the process control, a quick overview of it. So one is on the finding the problem faster and easier. So CCM and automated testing to manage the the violation exceptions, avoid misses, reduce cost because you're gonna have a interactive with the various other systems also, and then as a single source of truth, which means that you're gonna have one framework. That framework is going to be created and agreed by across all the stakeholders, and thereby you don't need to have a redundant thought process of what may still go wrong. So you're going to create one framework. Against that framework, you're going to identify all the process related activities, and you're going to monitor the violations around it. That's going to help you to track the control violation on a real-time basis. Adapt and scale as you're going to grow with the organization, or as you're going to probably bring more of the technologies. This SAP GRC is quite friendly. It's quite adaptable to all the technologies that you can probably integrate that to the GRC. So thereby you don't need to worry whether this particular technology can be probably linked to my SAP GRC or not. And then it can also be linked to the external world of the websites. For example, you want to integrate to NIST website, or you want to integrate that with the Germany website to identify all the related regulatory updates. You will be able to do that with the SAP GRC, and build confidence in the management, because once they are able to track these control on a real-time basis, that can give a lot of confidence to the management, at least to the higher level of risk that they're really concerned about, and thereby that can help them to track a lot of the fraudulent activities, try them to control the regulatory aspects, try to control the deviations. So thereby it's going to help them to have with too much of enormous responsibility on the top management today. This GRC should be able to help them to identify it and also give a lot of confidence as well.
Yeah, just 2 points from my side is primarily on the user productivity. We have seen tremendous productivity increase when you implement the process control, even to a very minimal extent. Obviously, you cannot improve or implement process control that big as what the GRC expects us to do. But still, like even a very minimal implementation or few steps towards that process control brings a lot of value add in terms of productivity. And secondly, it definitely has the cost of audit. When I say the cost of audit, it's not about the money or the fees, but the cost of audit with respect to the time spent also drastically comes down. In a way, like the productivity of the whole audit team and also the auditees together. It improves a lot of productivity, and also the time taken is significantly reduced. So those two are certain very critical benefits in addition to what Karthik was mentioning.
Yeah. So we talk about on the business integrity screening, the functions and the features. So quick objectives on the BIS tool is that provide real time, the preventive and detective capabilities. So as we said, there are inbuilt rules based on we can create it, and the predictive analytics to adapt to the changing fraud patterns. which can help you to identify the kind of an activity the user does. And thereby it also gives you a real-time alerts on that. And then you also have, the remediation planning as part of it, as part of the BIS. This is a tool which is focused more to detect and prevent the frauds across all the business process, and also basis, the data that resides in your system. It also helps you to drive corrections to centralized platform. So the moment you get to know something has gone wrong, it could be, a specific change in the bank record of the vendor master, or a payment being done as well. So this will help you to immediately go back and arrest it, rather than, identifying it after 10 days or 15 days after the money has gone, after we do a BRS, etc. And then it also helps you to create a lot of alerts, which will help you to monitor it. It also helps you to, to monitor the operations if something is really required to be put in the place from a process standpoint of view. So this is one of the very good tool which I've heard on the market in terms of, how to detect and prevent the frauds. But then all depends on the rules that we create. SAP does have some sort of inbuilt rules also, but that is subjected to be modified. You can also add some of the rules as well, based on your experience on that. Yeah. So the BIS typically, it uses the artificial intelligence and some sort of, the ML as well, which will help it to, identify the patterns, basis, the quite a lot of data that has been exposed to. It also uses the predictive analysis, for it to learn the data, to predict the possibility of a fraud or an anomaly. So basis that it will be able to read the data, type of the data. It also will tell you in terms of what could go wrong. So thereby is a continuous, the data, monitoring, and also, it helps put various scenarios. It's able to, identify that as well. On the controllership organization point of view, there is an increased accuracy and the quality of, the alerts that are getting generated, or rather the observation that we can identify as part of this particular tools, and also the GL and transaction oversight. And we also going to have a decreased risk in terms of, because we want to have a real time, alert in terms of what has gone wrong, improved financial close, and also going to have an improved efficiency in terms of, while we're going to identify something has gone wrong as a fraudulent activity. It helps the management to quickly, get into it, put a proper control in the place, and or rather to create some additional rule, thereby that helps you to, create a lot of efficiencies around it. And also it's going to put a workflow in place, thereby which will trigger an alert for the various departments for them to get involved, investigate it, and also, put a proper control in the place, which also extends to my improved governance and improved controls also. And the fraud mitigation becomes very relevant in today's world, because once you have an alert that tells you something gone wrong, and you investigate it, and then you get to know there's a fraud, and then immediately you probably, put the relevant controls to place to mitigate it, and then the real-time insights and the analytics. Now, this is something which we used to do after the fraud activity happens. We kind of, go investigate, do all of it, but all of it right now is going to be on a real-time basis, through which you'll be able to, identify and arrest that. On the audit management and functions and features. So it's a complete overview of the audit management: planning, processing, corrective and preventive actions, documentation, valuation. Now, we'll talk about that in the next slide in terms of, what it is all to do with. For example, we're talking about a planning, right on the audit plan, which is, for example, you'll have an audit charter, basis which you'll have an audit plan, and you'll be able to create the team who is going to probably look into it, and what are the various assets that are going to be under the audit. And then you're also going to create, what may not get audited, and then you'll have an internal audit kind of, the various testing scenarios, what is that we're going to do, the control activities, etc. And then basis that you also will be able to identify, you will track the plan in terms of when we are going to test it, what is the expected result from these controls, whether it's going to be, effective at this design level or at the implementation level, versus what exactly has gone wrong, right? Is it something to be really of a high concern or probably of a low concern? So likewise, across all, you'll be able to track it. And then there's also a place where you can create a documentation across all of these control activities. And then you also will be able to track the various, the observations or exceptions, and what is the mitigation plan, how are you going to track to the non-compliance, etc. And also you can assign that to a specific individual who is going to be responsible for it, and thereby you will have a complete, the responsibility of the audit plan from a intra-audit standpoint of view. Yeah. That's okay. On the key features, you have a real-time insights into the enterprise level audits, including issue and remediation status, providing capability to plan resources, and driving structured audit process by leveraging workflows for the execution, review, and audit activities. Now, I would want to make a point here. It's not something, I'm trying to say there is something new that SAP GRC has. But the beautiful thing of SAP is that right from the risk framework to the process control, to the access control, to the audit management, all of it is there in one GRC. So thereby, all of these four will integrate with each other. Thereby, it will be able to blend to give you a better insight, a better output. That is what is the beauty of the SAP GRC, because all of it has been integrated together. I'm sure all of us would know what is audit management. Well, it's going to be a specific topic to talk about, to take you to various screens of SAP GRC. But the whole objective here is that because of these modules being put together, which can easily integrate and give you a better insights and a dashboard for you to review and probably deep dive into. Yeah, I think we spoke about this. Yeah, I'll pause here for a few seconds. Maybe quickly you can go through this. Yeah.
Yeah, on the SAP Analytics overview, basically like SAP Analytics now on the cloud and both on the on-prem has gone leaps and bounds much larger way in the last 4 or 5 years, especially after 17. After the SAP Analytics Cloud came into the marketplace in a much vigorous way. So now you are able to see basically like not only with respect to the core ERP, with respect to GRC also, the same overall architecture remains. Instant data updates with S/4HANA, that's one well understood basic actually. I wouldn't highlight that as a highlight here, but still it's still there. And whatever happens with respect to S/4HANA in a combination of GRC, you will always be able to see and take decisions. The basic landscape with respect to the KPIs are still holding good with respect to all applications and operating systems at the basic premise. Here, the one point which you may note with respect to the asterisk is the security information and event management, the CM. So whatever happens, if you see at the bottommost place, so the CM is whatever happens as an event with respect to security information and any alert with respect to that which needs to come into the ERP as a KPI. So that has been very clearly embedded into the GRC platform and also can be tagged to whatever happens in S/4HANA also in your core ERP as a transaction. So now these two clubbed together, forming part of the source data is a very, very powerful basic data source. Then you have the architecture, the visualization layer, which includes the data exploration and for the management consumption, which includes the predictive analytics. It could be very small, as I was mentioning in an earlier example. The trend on a particular function where we may be having more risks and vulnerabilities vis-a-vis where we are very strong. That kind of predictive analytics where I need to step in tomorrow and resolve something, or it could be a data mining activity with too many multidimensional reporting and analytics for the management consumption, and it could be something on a core process control also, including any touch base with your master data and other things. For example, if my bill of material is one very critical area where I have more risks, that is one governance part which I may need to alert my production department or engineering department to pay attention to. And obviously that is instantly connected to S/4HANA also. So if you take again all these things as a one bundle, not keeping GRC separate, HANA separate, MDM separate or anything like that. If you see, it's like a medical alert, like your BP going up or something else going up, some other parameter going not okay. So if you have multi-dimensional things, right from your master data, transaction data, or your core database, and including your integrated portals with other systems, be it vendor systems or customer systems, or any other your own file systems where you have the FTP protocols and other things. So it gives a completely holistic view of the entire control mechanism or the governance mechanism.
Yeah, just to want to add a couple of points here. For example, I'm talking about data, exploration, right? System integration. Example is that, for example, your SAP Analytics will try to integrate with a CRM. Also, it will integrate with the Google Analytics as well. So thereby, it will give you a real-time, the sales projection as on today. To talk about data modeling again, another example is that the SAP Analytics will try to, integrate with various data across various banks to give you what is the financial position, as on today. We talk about visualization of a design is, for example, a product. If you want to understand what is the profit and what is the profit margin versus the sale that has happened. So it will be able to, you'll be able to deep dive in each of the product. For the product specific, you can see a margin, the sales, the position, etc. So you'll be able to visualize all of it to each at a granular level. You'll be able to visualize that. Ongoing monitoring, for example, in a hospital industry, you'll be able to monitor some of the health-related records of a patient in terms of on a real-time basis, and also in terms of the inventory, what is available in the hospital, you will be able to identify all of that. So the SAP Analytics, a good thing is it can give you a real-time collaboration with various data, can help you to assess, what is the position as on today with a granular level of details. So I think I'll pause here for a few seconds. The enterprise-wide the transparency, as I said, multiple data sets from various SAP to non-SAP sources. Also, the reporting different information layer with the granularity that we can look into it, provide visibility into the internal operations of the SAP system. On the data-driven insights, as I said, so this can also help you to visualize the integrated view of the cyber-related incidents also, right? So it can also help you to assess what is the cyber vulnerability that probably we are looking at or rather exposed to because of the data, a third-party system that you're probably trying to interact with. So a third-party system may have a lot of vulnerabilities. We always take care of our internal system. We don't do much of assessments on the third parties because we believe they have a good amount of control, but that is always a gateway for the hackers to come in or external, the penetrators to get in. So that gives you a better insight. What are the vulnerabilities that are exposed to? Driven metrics or leading industry control framework, which help you to understand what are the various framework that we are probably have to be complied with, and what are the controls that are probably not in compliant as of today because of the vulnerability that exists in the system. And then we also talk about the evidence into your cybersecurity proficiency. We'll be able to get into what is the related artifacts that are required to be looked at because of a control deviation. We should be able to quickly put them into the place and also document it as part of your tool. And then simplified reporting capabilities require a lot of analytics dashboards that you'll be able to generate with a status update. Also, the preparation time comes down. The time that you take for you to take an action comes down. Detect the time that it comes down. Like there are quite a lot of benefits that you'll be able to derive out of the SAP Analytics. It also helps you to put a better security controls in the place because you'll be able to identify them in a much faster time frame. Next slide, yeah. This is a dashboard. This is a dashboard that you can probably look into it. System usage, operation management, identity and access management, SOD critical access, and then vulnerability management. Kind of some examples that we have given. There are quite a lot of other analytics also. But yeah, some of the good dashboards that we want to showcase it to you.
Yeah, only one point here is the IAM, if it is used with the SAP GRC, even the reports which are getting published to the users automatically gets disabled the moment he leaves the organization. So there's a multi-level control with respect to IAM over here. That's one very critical point.
Yeah. So the key benefits are time saver. So SIP, GRC, analytics, module will save time with, the BI. It also the reporting part of it. It also helps you to, have a cost benefit in terms of maintenance and installation part. Provides a good amount of security on the confidentiality and availability of your data with the audit trail that we have. And then the real-time interaction, real-time, the violations. And then the user experience is going to be really great because it integrates with various systems. Thereby the user experience, the amount of the penetration of the granular level of details that you'll be able to achieve in the GRC is much better compared to what we can have in the other GRC tools in the market. Yeah, slide. So I'm going to pause here because this is very self-explanatory. I don't want to talk about it. I'll pause here for for the readers to quickly take a look, and then I think we can get into the question and answer session. I think we are 4 minutes for the session to close. Any questions? We are happy to take it up.
Sir Amit.
Yes, Amit. Yeah.
Sir, just I'm sharing my point of opinion here rather than any question. My belief is GRC tool is really successful in any organization where the metadata and the master data and the transaction data are handled by different teams. If even after implementing the GRC, any of the metadata, master data or transaction data are handled by the same team or the same person, then the relevance of GRC is not there. Am I right?
It is not like that, sir. So basically, like many companies have implemented both GRC, not necessarily SAP GRC. Similarly, I'm talking about only the approach. Okay, so after implementing, they have centralized the MDM team, or Master Data Management team. As you know, like MDM governance goes very well with the GRC governance.
Yeah, I know.
A centralized team, GRC still brings a lot of benefits, and like both teams or both frameworks can exist together very successfully.
But sir, I noticed in some of the cases where the GRC is there, but still the normal team, a transaction team is handling the master data, and there is a SOD conflict, but still the process is going on, and nobody is raising issue on that.
So that could be a specific case to that particular company, how they want to deal with that. Because it could be a smaller unit where one person comes and opens the show and closes the door and leaves by the next.
Sir,
So like, we cannot have very strict rule for every company put together in the GRC. It could be a unit specific. For one unit, it could be very stringently applied, and for another unit within the same company, it could be loosely there. So
right, sir.
Depends on.
So I think Amit, you also have another question in terms of the merit stream GRC tool. See, the merit tool GRC tool compared to SAP GRC, it is known for its flexibility. It's known for its the user interface also, and the amount what you can customize it. The one component I feel SAP GRC is better compared to the merit stream is in terms of the process control module, and in terms of the access control module, SAP GRC to me at least I see has a upper hand. But otherwise, the merit stream is very good in the interface part, very good in the flexibility, very good in in terms of the customization. I think it's very easy to implement compared to the GRC. But merit stream has more to do with the third party risk management also modules it has. But SAP GRC it has its own benefits because from the process access control across all, you have all of it in one module, which makes it better from that point of view. Both has their own plus and minus. I can't really compare it to say what is better, but it's up to the organization to go with what they want. Yeah.
Thanks, sir. Thanks.
There's another question, maybe I think Rajagopal can take the SAP GRC help in automating the compiling of research in organizations.
Yeah, it definitely can, and also like it's one of the basic functions why we encourage going with the SAP GRC itself is like not only a risk register, it's a risk and control register, I would put it that way. So it not only gives you an advantage of understanding the risks in advance and also putting a control over there, but also can even go on a suggestive mode, what you need to look into or what you can look into based on the business processes which you are implementing.
Great. The other question says that is audit log available for a concurrent logins? To me, with my experience, is audit log file is available. Maybe Raju, will you have any experience where the concurrent login audit is not available in GRC?
It is available. Only point is like, as you know, like SAP generally, the concurrent login is something which you need to be very careful about with another aspect, not with respect to GRC, but with respect to licensing part.
Yeah.
You need to be extremely careful while going with the concurrent login part. So yes, it has the audit trails, and also like it's a very very primitive and fundamental feature of SAP. So there is no issue with that. But have an eye on access violations with respect to concurrent login, because it depends on it depends on your EULA, what we call end user licensing agreement.
Exactly.
So based on that.
But for audit trail, I think it's there. That's my experience there. So yeah, great. I think one question is that is GRC implementation a simple job? What are the best things to look for a GRC? Is it a cost benefit? I think Rajagopal will be the right person to answer that. Yeah.
GRC obviously like doesn't bring you value immediately. Okay. Let us put that one of our group companies has implemented GRC just 3 months back, and that CIO was talking to me for many days before implementing that. It doesn't bring you value or ROI immediately, but it brings a lot of factors which ultimately impacts your ROI. So that is the way you need to look at GRC. It's more like a health check. It doesn't give you help, but it says where you are with respect to your health. So that's the only way I can.
Yeah. Yeah, again, it depends upon the organization in terms of which one you want to go. I think Archer is very good for the mid-sized companies to small-sized companies. GRC will help you from a larger company perspective. So there are a lot of thought process. I think it's all to do with appetite and the risk that the company is looking at. What is that they want to implement? As I said, it's not something we can go with A or B. It requires a lot of thought process, assessment to decide what is your requirement and which one should we go. And as Rajagopal said, it requires a maturity for the organization to understand the GRC and how to use it to the better, use it to the best of from a compliance standpoint of view. Yeah. Thank you. I think we both are done. Back to you, Deepika. Yeah.
Thanks, Karthik. Thanks, Rajagopal sir, for such an enlightening and interactive session. I think if we don't have any more questions, we can wind up the session. Thank you so much. Thanks everyone for attending the session.
Thank you. Yeah.
Thanks for the opportunity.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.